So they manipulate Congress. The state secrets privilege, I have a whole lecture on that. We won't go into that now, but I'll give you an example. The government can, at any time that it wants, for example, they filed suit against the NSA for the domestic spying program. All right, NSA, you tell us exactly how you were spying on the American people and exactly how you were doing it. After the case went on, the NSA said, no, we've got this unbridled privilege called the state secrets privilege where the executive branch can shut down a case anytime it wants with impunity, seal it forever, and not even Congress will ever see the evidence. And they used that with the NSA domestic surveillance program. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about the unbridled power, unconstitutional power of government secrecy. I wish I could say it gets better. Sadly, it doesn't. Controls the White House. Yes, they do. It blindfolds the president. The CIA has engaged in operations and is currently covert operations that the president doesn't even know about. It goes all the way back to JFK and the Bay of Pigs. It's been going on ever since. Iran-Contra, did Reagan know about it? I don't think so. I was there then. They conduct operations and they don't tell the president. There's something wrong with that picture. Yeah, constitutionally, yes, there is. They manipulate the president. Do you remember the Iraq War? George Tenet went out and said that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. He made the comment over with the British. He knew darn well that wasn't the case. There were no weapons of mass destruction. The argument was, well, they were in little vehicles and they moved them out of the country. No, there were no weapons of mass destruction. And they started what is known in the military colleges now as the worst military mistake in U.S. history. 6,000 U.S. troops dead, 200,000 wounded, and 500,000 Iraqi children died because of wrong intelligence. Now, as an intelligence officer, if you make a bad decision and it just affects you, that's one thing. But when a lot of people die, that's another thing entirely. So they can manipulate the White House. They influence the re-election. Are we seeing the influence of a presidential re-election right now by the FBI, the CIA specifically? Or is the shadow government now controlling the election of Donald Trump, the possibility in the next go-around? You darn right they are. So they're controlling, literally controlling the re-election of a president. Controls the judiciary. We've got the FISA court, which is essentially a secret Supreme Court. Operates, they're not voted in, they operate in complete secrecy. Some of what they do, based on my past, is okay. I mean, if Russia's committing espionage within the United States, which they do, and they get a FISA warrant to spy on Igor, that's fine. But when they use it to spy on U.S. citizens, that's not fine. It's a secret Supreme Court. And lastly, the state secrets privilege, as I mentioned, they coerce judges into rubber stamping this thing. And the statement that the judge made, and I've done a lot of research on this, the statement that the federal judges made was, well, we're not experts on intelligence matters, so we just defer to the executive branch. So they just rubber stamp it. There have been a lot of cases of civilians who were injured or serious things happened. The government invoked the state secrets privilege to cover up the negligence, and they just rubber stamped it, and that person's case will never see the light of day. This is what Harry S. Truman. There's another ship in here somewhere, isn't there? Where's the, there you are, there's another ship, S-H-I-P-P. Ironically, our great-great-great-grandfather is Harry S. Truman, Harry Shipp Solomon Truman, so apparently, boy, what an irony. Apparently we're related, but he regretted the creation of the shadow government, specifically the CIA. He called it a sinister and mysterious agency. And he said this is in the book, there's something about the way the CIA has been functioning that is casting a shadow on our historic position of freedom, and I feel we need to correct it. 3 days later, that op-ed was removed from the Washington Post, never to be seen again. Washington Post, member of the Council on Foreign Relations, connected to the CIA, and on the loop goes. They pulled the ad after he wrote that. He said that to his dying day. He regretted the creation of specifically CIA covert operations. The point has to be made, though. Harry Truman's original goal was correct. We need a good intelligence agency, don't we? And we've got some bad enemies. We've got terrorism out there. We got the Chinese, who have every intention of usurping our democracy if they ever get the chance. The chance is slim because they're so financially dependent on us. But yes, we do. We need a good and accurate intelligence organization to collect information for our national security. We just don't need the monster that we got now. And so there's got to be some kind of congressional reform to rule this monster back in under Congress and under the Constitution, because they are manipulating our elected government without a doubt. And in what really is a post-constitutional government, they're manipulating our elected offices. Problem, size, and power. As I showed you in the first two slides, this thing is massive. How do we correct this? Well, we start with humble folks like myself, just kind of getting this out where people can see it, thanks to Steve and Jason and others, so people can see what this monster is. And once the truth gets out and the people start seeing how bad this is, we can start mobilizing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people at a time. And this is where it starts, where some moron like me gets up and takes the risk to put this stuff out there. And my wife will tell you, a risk it is. I talked about weaponized secrecy, the currency of the shadow government, remember? Sadly, they are using secrecy completely to circumvent the U.S. Constitution. I want to show you, it's sad, it's almost funny how they do it. But they are using secrecy to cover up unconstitutional activity, violations of international law. When Hillary ran guns into Benghazi without anybody knowing it, it was a violation of U.S. and international law. She did it anyway. Give you an example. Bill Clinton and Loretta Lynch, Attorney General, have a surprise meeting on the tarmac, right? Sky Harbor Airport. Surprise meeting. It was a coincidence. No, it was not. Loretta Lynch amended her flight plan. She was supposed to fly in the next day. At the last minute, they changed their flight plan so she could fly in and meet Bill Clinton on the tarmac. Okay, so they talked about grandchildren and golf, they said, right? Okay, so Congress demanded, okay, DOJ, show us exactly what they talked about on that tarmac. And the FBI was like, we don't have to do that, we're the FBI. Congress said, oh yes you do, we're your boss. So they said they finally did, and that's what they gave them. Something's wrong with their grandchildren, man, and it ain't good. So they ordered them again, and they got this. Golf and grandchildren? I don't think so. The Clinton crime syndicate in operation? Maybe. Here's another one. Golf and grandchildren. Remember the weaponized use of secrecy? The shadow government? This is what I'm talking about right here. And that was never unredacted. To this day, it has not, the FBI will not let this information be unredacted and the blackouts taken out. Something wrong with that? That is an unchecked power. It's an unconstitutional power. This is the appointment of Special Counsel Robert Mueller. This is his appointment letter. It goes into all the FBI's, and then it says Special Counsel's purview, and what it's supposed to be doing is right here. That's what he's tasked to do, all in black. And that's what they released. This is what we, the people, you and I, get to see. Nothing. It doesn't say specifically what the special counsel is supposed to be investigating, because the FBI blacked it out. Now we know that special counsel guidelines in the Department of Justice mandate that a special counsel has to have a specific crime, say Russia collusion, and the investigation has got to stay only along the lines of that alleged crime, right? Is Robert Mueller doing that? No, he's way off the rails. Way off the rails. He's violating his own regulations, DOJ regs. But this is, I'm sure you're amazed at what his tasks are, because here it is. No one knows. You see, this is how they do it. So if you want to conceal it, if you're the shadow government, CIA, NSA, FBI, and you want to conceal something from Congress, and it's a game. I think we talked about that with somebody. Why don't these congressional committees nothing ever happens, no one ever gets indicted, no one ever gets prosecuted, they just go off to their six-figure jobs? Well, there's plenty of examples. The torture report. Congress demands that the CIA turn over all of their procedures in the torture report, okay? If there's anything to hide, no problem, just turn it over. The CIA refused, as they always do. Geez, I think it went on for a year. Finally, Congress demanded it, and that's what they got. Can you read anything in that document? No. And that stands today. No one can reverse it. Now President Trump, if he wanted to take the risk with some of these things, could demand that they be redacted. He could. But in Washington, things don't work that easily. He's got his hands full. No doubt about that. NSA surveillance. Congress, we demand you, NSA, after Clapper had his hands all over his face, we demand that you show us what you've been, how you've been spying on American citizens. NSA said, well, state secret privilege. We don't have to show you that. We're the NSA. Intelligence Committee said, yes, you do. We're your bosses. So finally they said, whoa, okay, and they provided him this. Can you read anything in that document? No. Once again, how about this one? Fast and Furious. Eric Holder held in contempt of court because he wouldn't turn over documents on behalf of the DOJ. Same thing, went on for a year. Holder refused to do it. Finally, he said, okay, we'll cooperate, and this is what they gave him. Are we seeing a pattern here? I mean, this is arrogance gone to seed. It really is. What about this? The People's Report, the 9/11 report, 28 pages, blacked out. Anybody remember that? And they wouldn't release what was in there. Turns out we know now it was connection of Saudi Arabia to 9/11, and no one's touching Saudi Arabia. But they finally released it, and those were the 28 pages. Okay? Can we see who is controlling Congress now with impunity and withholding information? That's just the tip of the iceberg. Your humble correspondent, myself, saw this personally. We talked about this earlier, Jason and myself, on a broadcast earlier today. I came across a cover-up with inside the CIA that was pretty bad. And it started with some of this I was able to get in the book, some of it they blacked out. The ability of agents to get into a computer system overseas and identify our covert personnel, which would lead to their assassination. It went on to a poisoning of a family. I developed evidence of that cover-up. I provided it to the CIA as a good soldier. And the CIA had a secret meeting with the judge. The judge told our attorneys, this information is solid. Mr. Shipp's case has got to go forward. They had a secret meeting with the judge, and they put me under a gag order. Dedicated, decorated CIA officer. Put me under a gag order. You will not talk about this particular operation to anyone. And you're under a gag order. So I said, okay, what am I gagged by? Well, we can't tell you. It's too sensitive. So they told me that for 2 years. I didn't know what I was gagged by. I just walked around gagged, not knowing what I was gagged by. We finally got it out of them. Does this look familiar? There it is. The gag order covering up an operation really involved the near death of a young family. Nothing classified at all. But they used an MO that's been in place, can be abused by any official that gets in that program. They can do this with impunity, and no one can stop them. Now, in a constitutional government elected by the people, is this sort of thing correct? No, absolutely not. They're doing this with impunity. This is the settlement agreement. The judge, my evidence was so strong, the judge ordered them to go to settlement. We settled for a pittance, really, of what it should have been. Essentially, my wife was almost terminally ill, so was my son, from a poisoning. And the evidence was so strong, the judge ordered them to a mediated settlement. You will settle, you will settle. Now, everybody signed the document, including the CIA, and then they did this. They said, no, we're not going to abide by that. We said, it's a legal document. They said, you accept a lower settlement, or we're going to invoke the state secrets privilege if you don't, and we're going to seal your case forever, and no one's ever going to see those doctors' diagnosis or anything. And that's exactly what they did. Not even our congressman can get in and see the environmental reports and the doctor's diagnosis. So I have seen this personally. And this is kind of where my mission started, was right here when I began to see how this beast operated. They sealed all the evidence from Congress. They blocked my retirement funds, which is a felony. I had to remind them of that. Pardon me, but this is a felony. You can't do this. But they did. They raised the interest rates on all of my credit union loans to make them unaffordable. Yeah, this is what they do. That's why you don't see many whistleblowers out there. I don't like that term anyway, but you don't see many whistleblowers because they have a system that does this. IGs, Department of Justice IG, the IG report just came out. You know about that. We'll talk a little bit about that. IGs, I told my wife Sue when the IG report started, don't expect anything big from the DOJ IG because these people are DOJ careerists. They work within the DOJ. In the case of the CIA IG, who I sent my case to and all the evidence, they were agency employees. They blocked it. They destroyed documents from the cable system. And I had a former IG official, I was a program manager, we had an offsite, sat down and said, I was with the IG and they destroyed your documents, covered up your cases. They were so terrified what they were doing was going to get out in public. So these are agency careerists. You think they're going to really, same with the DOJ, issue a report that's going to hammer the FBI or Hillary Clinton for felonies? No, and that didn't happen. No surprise. So I've seen this stuff personally. This is from the Company of Shadows, chapter 25, which I got more stuff out in that book than I frankly thought I would, a lot. It was quite surprising. But what they blacked out was this. These are doctors' diagnoses. This is the environmental report I had done that said there were poisons in the house. This was a break-in that happened to our house. None of this is classified at all. None of it is a source or a method. None of it has anything to do with intelligence whatsoever. It is illegal for any intelligence agency to black out information simply because it's embarrassing. That's a Ronald Reagan executive order. but they did it with impunity. Now, I'm out speaking now, revealing the shadow government, so touche. That's, you reap what you sow, I guess. But that's what they do, and that's what we are witnessing weaponized intelligence. I'll get into some detail here that some of you are probably going to relate to regarding the shadow government. The entire intelligence system has been and is now arrayed against the presidency of Donald Trump. For his removal, they've already done a character assassination. That's complete. Now they're trying to push for impeachment. There is no obstruction of justice. That's a media meme or whatever you want to call it, but they're pushing that because they want to get rid of this guy. But the chilling part of it is this. Anybody remember Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer's quote on Rachel Maddow's show, where he said this: if you cross the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. He's talking about the President of the United States. Now just think about that for a second. That's chilling. If you, the President, cross the CIA, the FBI, and the NSA, they're going to get you. That's what he's saying. In a constitutional government, that's how serious this has gotten. The only time that this has happened before in history was Allen Dulles against John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy fired Allen Dulles. Allen Dulles created a secret cabal of senior CIA officers. Allen Dulles, by the way, was connected into the Third Reich, was close to some of the members of the Third Reich and smuggled Germans in as CIA scientists. He was really a bad guy. Despised John F. Kennedy. After Kennedy was assassinated, look this up, it's all out there. After Kennedy was assassinated, guess who they put in charge of the Warren Commission? Allen Dulles, who culled and decided who the CIA witnesses were going to be and what they were going to say and what they weren't. He controlled the entire hearing. So this sort of conflict between a president and the shadow government intelligence agency hasn't happened since then, and we're seeing that right now. And I think, well, we know now that a lot of, even the staff members in the White House are getting protective details. So it's gotten real bad. I mean, if they had the chance to take Donald Trump out physically, trust me, they would do it, sadly. So it's kind of hard to read that red there. Whatever you think about Donald Trump, now he's out of the box. He's doing stuff that we used to dream about, pulling out of the UN and some of the crazy things they're doing that we're paying for, the secret TPP, that they didn't tell us what they were, and on and on and on. This is good stuff. So he's doing stuff that a lot of people have been waiting for 20 years, but he is out of the box. They can't control him. They can't control him financially. He tweets things that sometimes we go, man, I wish you wouldn't have done that. But they can't stop that. He's writing all these executive orders and stopping all these things. They can't stop that. He's been looking into the CIA. He's been busting the NSA. You can see the conflict with the FBI now. They're terrified of Donald Trump because he is not controllable. So whether you love him, hate him, or he's your buddy or not, whatever, they're afraid of him. They can't control. I know I was in there. It is all about control in the shadow government. That is what it's all about. I talked about the shadow government against our elected government. The CIA, specifically Mr. Director John Brennan, broke into the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence computers on Capitol Hill and spied on the torture report. Anybody hear about that? Spied on the U.S. Senate. Do you know what that is? That's a felony. Multiple felonies. Was he indicted? Did he get in trouble? Did he get a pay cut? Did anything happen? No. He got a promotion, and now he's making, 6 figures with MSNBC as a correspondent, pounding on Trump all the time. Nothing happened. Hacked into the Senate computers inside the United States, the CIA did, and they got away with it. Am I down on the CIA? We need good intelligence. I don't like what it's become, because it's become a monster, and it needs to be reined back in. What did John Brennan do? This is typical shadow government fashion. They said, Mr. Brennan, you broke into Senate computers. That's illegal. And his response was, the stuff on those computers was classified CIA information, and you could go to jail for accessing it. That's what he did. That's what he came back with. That's what they do. The NSA spied on Congress. The NSA tapped into conversations between Congress and Netanyahu and Israel about the Iran nuclear deal. Tapped into congressional phone calls. Constitutional problem? Illegal problem? Yeah, but they're doing this stuff. And the reason I'm doing this is because most people don't know that this is going on, but it is. And in a constitutional government, we got to do something about this somehow. And this is where we start, right here. And it goes on. The FBI, we know they spied on the Trump campaign. National Security Advisor created a spreadsheet with hundreds of Americans' names unmasked in NSA surveillance. Samantha Powers, unmasked This is the UN ambassador. Samantha Powers was the UN ambassador, unmasked over 260 names from NSA surveillance of Americans. What the heck is the UN ambassador doing unmasking NSA surveillance names? The UN ambassador? So she got grilled by Congress and she said, well, no, it wasn't me. Someone used my name to do it. Now I know from the inside, you don't just walk in and say, I'm Susan Powers, can I look at all the NSA surveillance? You've got a badge, you've got a password, you've got access, and you were grilled all the way into that skiff. She lied and got away with it, just walked, nothing happened. The FBI is still withholding Fusion GPS documents, more on that later. They're refusing to turn over FBI Clinton email and the Russia FISA reports. They're still refusing to turn that over from their bosses, the intelligence committees. And what did the FBI, Rod Rosenstein, however you want to pronounce it, what did Rosenstein do when Nunes said, listen, if you don't give us this information by last Wednesday, I think it was, we're going to have you impeached. So what Stein came back and said, oh yeah? Well, the FBI is going to open an investigation on Congress, and we're going to start subpoenaing congressmen. If you can imagine that, the intelligence committees are their boss. The FBI is now threatening Congress that it's got the nerve to open up a congressional investigation or an FBI investigation on Congress. What is wrong with that picture? They are out of control, man, big time, no doubt about it. That's going on right now. Clapper and Brennan leaked the dossier to the media, more on that later, called it intelligence when it was not. They lied directly, and this is weird. Clapper and Brennan, some of you may know what an amicus brief is. There are 3 DNC employees. You heard about the lawsuit against the Trump campaign? 3 DNC employees have filed a lawsuit against the Trump campaign claiming that they were defamed because the Trump campaign hacked into the DNC emails. And we all know that that wasn't a hacking. Bill Binney, a friend of mine, former NSA manager, did a study and found out that that stuff was downloaded on a thumb drive and removed. It was not hacked. They traced the addresses and everything. They've got proof of it. So there was no hacking to begin with. But what Clapper and Brennan have done is filed an amicus brief saying, we agree with these 3 DNC employees. We agree that it was hacked, and we agree that the Trump campaign should be sued when they know darn well that's not what happened. Now, why would 2 former directors of the CIA do something like that, knowing that it's false, trying to bring down a sitting president? Shadow government. Does that sound like a conspiracy theory? No, this is fact. I wish it was. We all know, I'll get into this in detail, James Comey protected Clinton from prosecution. I will show you that he committed multiple violations of Title 18 U.S. Code. He committed a couple felonies in doing that. And what I'm doing at the end of this lecture is I am publicly requesting that Sessions, if he sticks around, prosecute some of these people. Because these are high-level government officials that have committed felonies. And things need to change. They need to be held accountable. Now we're going to get into the meat, the dead fish of the subject. The fish wrapped in paper subject. All the study and research that I've done over the last 5 years on the shadow government, the deep state, and international crime has gone back to one person. Every single time. And if you look at this, the number of people that were protecting Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State and when she was running for office that protected her, Christopher Steele, MI6, John Brennan, director of the CIA, leaked information, lied, and started a soft coup against Donald Trump to protect this lady? Why would he do that? James Clapper did the same thing, leaked information claiming the dossier was real when it was fake. He's now out pounding on Clinton as an anchor for CNN, of all things. Why are they protecting Hillary Clinton? And there's more. James Comey committed felonies, obstruction of justice, obstruction of a criminal investigation, and covering over her espionage use of this secret server. More on that later. Why would he do that? I'll show you. I'll show you the connection. It's going to blow your mind how these people are connected. Peter Strzok testified in Congress yesterday. He told Congress that what he had to say was too classified and he couldn't talk about it. That's literally what he said. He didn't answer their questions. See a pattern there? Yeah. Protecting Hillary Clinton, Susan Rice, unmasked names in NSA, Samantha Powers, 260 names unmasked in the Trump campaign. GCHQ, British intelligence, was right in there doing this against Trump. On behalf of this lady, what the heck? What kind of power does this woman have over these high-level government officials? And let me tell you, it's going to get worse. What the heck is going on? And then there's one thing worth noting. This is called the Presidential Daily Brief. When I was on the director's staff, one of our roles was to protect that thing when it got delivered to the president and cabinet. The President's Daily Brief goes to the president every day, and it's an update on the latest intelligence issues, the big ones in the United States. If the Trump campaign was being spied on by the Russians, then it would have gone in, and it did go into the Presidential Daily Brief, which went directly to Barack Obama, and he read and he knew about all this, period. That's the laws, it's a regulation, how the system works. It goes all the way to him. They used the power of the National Security Agency to spy again on U.S. citizens. Again, violation of the Fourth Amendment. What is that? It's a felony. It's multiple felonies in this case. They used the incredible power of the NSA to spy again, not just on the American people, but on a presidential opponent, an election opponent, if you can imagine. This is going to get worse. There's more coming out. This is the biggest scandal in U.S. history, maybe in Western history, that is happening and is unfolding right here. But there are some heroes in this. I think he's unsung. I don't think many people know. Anybody know about Admiral Mike Rogers' role in this? There are some good guys. Admiral Rogers was doing an audit inside the NSA, and he found high-level NSA employees and some British, I think they're MI6ers, that were sitting down and unmasking members of the Trump campaign. So what Admiral Rogers did was he went straight to the Trump campaign and sat down and said, Mr. President, my own NSA is spying on you, and I want you to know about it. He did this at his own personal expense because Barack Obama fired him immediately after that. And he remains, in my view, one of the unsung heroes in this whole. You don't hear much about him anymore. He just walked off into, I guess, after his career, like a real hero. And this guy deserves a lot. He deserves the Presidential Medal of Freedom, in my opinion. I hope he gets it. So there are some good guys in this, and there are some bad guys in the upper left, for example. Anyway, so the NSA now, just so you know, has created what they're calling the IC Gov cloud. Anybody heard about that? Yeah, some of you are wincing out there. You know what a cloud is. It's an internet that just kind of hangs out there. Well, the NSA now is moving all data to this cloud. They're taking all the data that was at the Utah data center on us, stored on these massive computers, and they're moving it to the cloud. What does that mean? Outside of U.S. jurisdiction and outside of U.S. law. And it gets worse. They have tripled their data collection on us. It has multiplied 3 times since their so-called reform. This data cloud was created by who? The people you get your package from in 2 days. The Amazon entered into a $600 million contract with the CIA to create this cloud, which means everybody in Amazon, including Jeff Bezos, signed a CIA secrecy agreement, and they're bound for life by that secrecy agreement, and he can never talk about what the CIA does or NSA with this cloud. So now they're doing this together. And the NSA has come out and said, well, what we're doing now, it's called traffic shaping. What traffic shaping is, NSA has taken its data collection from CONUS, the United States, internal United States, and they've moved it to hubs outside the US, in the UK, for example. So now they come in and they collect information on you and me, but it goes back and is stored in the United Kingdom and other places, and it's not bound by US constitutional law. And they keep doing it with impunity. All this information, thanks to Barack Obama, his last 2 weeks in office, all this information on you and me and our cell phones and our texts goes to all other 16 intelligence agencies. It's spread all over the shadow government, whatever the NSA collects that it likes on any one of us. And, go back here, because this next slide is a bombshell. They are, through this human cloud and Amazon and NSA, they are using artificial intelligence to create human behavior profiles on all of us in the cloud. So they can look down and monitor your and my behavior and decide whether we're a threat or not, and store all of our shopping behavior, driver's license, DMV records, what sort of traffic tickets we have, electronic pocket litter they call it, and they store it, and then they look at you and I and they decide whether we're a threat or not. That's going to be part of this, is a part of this NSA cloud that they're doing. Now we need to know that this exists. It's a monster, it's a monolith. We're not saying that an intelligence agency is bad, we need one, but we're saying this kind is out of control. And it's just getting worse. I said the other day on my Twitter, Big Brother is now an adult, and someone wrote back and said, no, he's not an adult, he's married and has children. I'm like, good point. Now, I want to get back to this, because this is where we're heading as we're getting kind of 2/3 of the way through here. Get back to this again. This guy, Bill Clinton. It wasn't just about the blue dress, as nasty as that was. Bill Clinton sold sensitive National Reconnaissance Office, Department of Defense satellite technology to the Chinese. Gave it to them. Top secret SCI satellite technology he gave to the Chinese. In his second term in office, the Chinese government pumped several $1 million into his re-election. Is there an espionage problem with that? Yeah. But what they got him on a blue dress? Please, what the heck happened with all of this? He got away with it. Why? The shadow government is that deep and controls the elected government that much. He got away with it. He was linked directly to the CIA from the start, going back to the governor of Arkansas when he was governor. And the Iran-Contra was going on. I was there then. Iran-Contra was going on, and they were landing jets in Mena, Arkansas at the airport, right? Connected to Iran-Contra, which means, just based on my knowledge on how things work, Governor Clinton had to have a shadow government clearance to do that, connected to the CIA and George Bush Sr. and what they were doing in that operation, which means going way, 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 way back to Arkansas, Bill Clinton was connected to the shadow government. Even worse, Hillary Clinton got a top secret CIA clearance when she was First Lady, which is illegal. She has been connected deeply to the shadow government, to the CIA and CIA operation, ever since they first got in the White House. For now, going back to Arkansas, for 30 years, this woman has been building her network, both within the intelligence sectors of our government, the deep state internationally through the Clinton Foundation, and created the most powerful crime syndicate known to man. And that's why this all goes back to her. I mean, it is, when I'm studying this, it gets nauseating, seriously. I mean, sometimes I have to put it down. It's nauseating, the amount of power here. The Clinton Foundation. And let me give a shout out to Charles Ortel here and Jason Goodman. Jason, could you wave your hand? Jason's live streaming. He's on, has Charles, it's Sundays with Charles, right, Jason? Is what it's called, Crowdsource the Truth 2. Charles Ortel, heroically, a financial expert, is splitting the foundation wide open, and there are multiple international felonies. Multiple. It's a fraud. I think he calls it the largest unprosecuted charity fraud in world history, which it is. Created by her and her husband. The Clinton Global Initiative tied in together, and I'm going to get into some detail of the money that flows into these things and the sheer illegality of it. But look at her connections. Why Alexander Downer, the Australian ambassador to the United States? Mr. Downer gave $24 million of Australian taxpayer money into the Clinton Foundation. And the Australian people didn't even know it. All of a sudden, Mr. Downer pops up again in a bar, approaching George Papadopoulos, trying to get him to admit that the Trump campaign had Hillary Clinton emails, which Papadopoulos never did. He just said, well, I'd heard from somebody else that there were some emails, and that's all he said. Downer went back, reported that to Brennan and the CIA, and that was one of the reasons they opened up the Russia collusion investigation. What was he doing? Protecting Hillary Clinton. Why? Why? We go on. George Soros contributed $27.1 million into Hillary Clinton's campaign. We all know about George Soros, don't we? His stated goal is to destroy the sovereignty of the United States and eliminate our boundaries. I mean, he just comes right out and says it. He was one of her chief financial contributors. Mohammed Morsi, Muslim Brotherhood. Hillary Clinton was connected to, supportive of, the Islamic Muslim Brotherhood, joined at the hip with Huma Abedin, whose family are members of the Muslim Brotherhood. She got visas for Muslim Brotherhood operatives who came in. They helped Mohammed Morsi take over Egypt, and the Muslim Brotherhood ruled, and they were crucifying Christians outside the gates of their headquarters until the Egyptian people rose up, and one of the most wonderful things I've ever seen, and had a mass rally and kicked them out of office. But she was behind the whole thing. They even had posters, the people, get Hillary out of Egypt, because they knew darn well who was behind this. Sandy Berger. Sandy Burger and Fries. Sandy Berger went into the National Archives. Anybody know about this one? Went into the National Archives, stole top secret information, shoved it down his pants. I think there was several documents. It was 4 or 5 documents. Shoved them down his pants, took them out, and then destroyed them. Only problem with Sandy, he was the National Security Advisor. Apparently didn't know much about national security because the archives have cameras in there, and they literally caught him walking out shoving these documents down his pants. That is multiple felonies. That's a minimum of 10 years in jail, and he got off. I'll show you who got him off when I show you the pattern here. But he was removing information to protect the Clintons. Why? Turns out it was related to 9/11, pre-9/11. No one knows, but it was the documents we're dealing with pre-9/11 related to the Clintons. That's all we know, because they were destroyed. To protect Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton. John Brennan has gone out on a limb and broken the law to protect Hillary Clinton, as I mentioned. James Comey will get into it in detail. Clear obstruction of justice. The DOJ report left this completely alone. We'll talk about that. He's protecting her. Why? One of the reasons, Lockheed Martin was contributing millions of dollars into, guess where? The Clinton Foundation. So Hillary takes care of her own. She got James Comey a membership on the board of directors of Lockheed Martin, where he made $6 million in 1 year. See, the syndicate takes care of itself. I'll show you later on, he's a syndicate member. And it goes on. She ran illegally guns into Benghazi without the knowledge of Congress, using Saudi Arabia and Qatar as a cutout. Those weapons went to the hands of Al-Qaeda, and they're now in the hands of ISIS. Did the U.S. create ISIS? Well, the guns got there indirectly, but ISIS has our guns and tanks through this illegal drug running operation that she was running out of the Department of State. And it just gets worse. I'll get into Uranium One later. This was a Russian intelligence operation specifically targeting Hillary Clinton. And I'll prove it in a moment. We all doing okay? I know this is a lot of stuff. We'll try to keep it going at a good pace. And it gets worse. Loretta Lynch protected the investigation, changed her criminal investigation in the documents to a matter to keep it from going down the criminal route. Why? Why the tarmac meeting? Why is she protecting this woman? Why are all these people protecting this woman? What the heck is going on here? You got Peter Strzok. We will stop Trump from being elected. We all know how he twisted the Hillary Clinton interviews. More on that later, to keep her from being prosecuted. The national news media is like a shield for this woman. I mean, they will leave information out. They will boldface lie to protect this lady. Why? I'll show you the Time magazine cover. Many of you have seen that. They downright lie and get away because they know what they're doing. It's propaganda. But why are these people and all these entities protecting? You've got Lady Rothschild up there with David Brock. Lady Rothschild is very close to Hillary Clinton. So is David Brock. Media Matters. George Soros is giving funding to CNN, other organizations supporting them financially to control the U.S. news media. My question is this. What the heck is going on here? What is going on with this woman? Where did she get this kind of power and these kind of people at all levels of our government, shadow and deep state, protecting this lady from what she deserves, and that's prosecution? How did this lady get this power? How on earth did this? Well, you'll see. It is shocking. It's an international crime syndicate that Hillary Clinton has been running and Bill Clinton has been running for 30 years. It is bloodthirsty, it is ruthless, it involves drug running down into Mexico and South America. On my radio program, I had a high-level Mexican official saying that people don't understand the Clinton Foundation is operating in drugs down in Mexico, and we all know it. That's how bad it is. There's espionage, money laundering, drug running, charity fraud, blackmail, murder, connected to the international world order. Those are Susan Rice's word, Barack Obama. The new international world order. Is there a new world order? There is a global economic world order. Yes. Now you want to call it the world order? Whatever. There is. And this Hillary Clinton, I call her the international world order princess, because she's the hub of this whole thing. Usurps the Constitution. The goal, not only of Hillary and Soros, but progressivism itself, is to usurp the United States Constitution and eliminate U.S. sovereignty. That's what this lady's all about, folks. That and trillions of dollars. Involves the Democratic National Committee. I hate to say this, I'm not a Democrat or a Republican, but I got to tell you, the DNC is not the Democratic Party of JFK and our mom and dad anymore. It's a criminal syndicate, and it's largely Marxist. Seriously. It's not the DNC, and a lot of Democrats don't realize that themselves because it's a family lineage thing. It's not the same DNC. You just look at the Fusion GPS scandal. And it involves, as I mentioned, the shadow government. So what happened with Uranium One? And I want to stress this. There's more to Uranium One than we know. We know this. Robert Mueller, you know, the nice public servant, straight-laced, ethical super detective, right? The best, cleanest guy that has ever walked the earth? No. Robert Mueller was investigating criminal acts by Russian nuclear officials at the time Uranium One was going on. He was in charge of the FBI counterintelligence investigation of Russian nuclear officials. He was investigating bribery, extortion, and racketeering by Putin's government, specifically the SVR, in trying to acquire U.S. nuclear fuel. That investigation was going on when Uranium One happened. For some reason, none of us know, Mr. Mueller carried a sample of uranium on behalf of Hillary Clinton to Moscow. It's classified. Nobody knows what the heck he was doing. Why would Robert Mueller, on behalf of the Secretary of State, be carrying uranium to Moscow? We understand Putin was directly involved in some of this. The Russian collusion investigation is a smokescreen for what was really going on. I'll show you that later. He approved, amongst others, the other 8 members, the sale of uranium, even though he knew this espionage activity was going on. I'm telling you, this man needs to be held accountable for this. This is serious. This is a serious threat to national security that this guy let happen. And the question, once again, is why? Because this was involving the Clinton Foundation. He ignored the national security threat. Russian nuclear officials routed millions of dollars into, guess what? The Clinton Foundation.